someone was so motivated by that opinion that they went and burned down the house of the CEO of Novartis, who's one of the companies involved in it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, actually, then they went to the gravesite of the guy's mother and stole her ashes.
Well, okay, that's what's happening within the thinking of people regarding all of this. It can come out pretty twisted, just out of frustration and anger and.
Well, and also that our minds have been twisted for years by the propaganda, the violence on television and et cetera. So we can't be expected to behave quite rationally under severe stress like this.
Right. I'm actually surprised that it's such a push on the vaccine, because there are so many ways that have already been used to introduce into water, into food, whatever they want.
Yeah, but a lot of them have failed and are failing, like the big push for fluoride. That's going down, although they were successful with the push for antidepressants and keeping the populace of the U.S. pretty much doped up at that level. But they, because now the situation with the fluoride molecule is somewhat endemic. They've got it out of one system, in the sense of stannous fluoride being used in water treatment for the theoretic benefit of your teeth, over to the fluoride molecules being used within the compounds for antidepressant. But again, it's also one of these things where a larger pattern seems to be emerging. And there were some things I've never understood. I would say, hear the idea of, well, they're moving us towards a global one world currency and a one world government. And I'd sit there and I'd think to myself, well, maybe so, but the powers that be, what we call the Illuminati or the Bilderbergers, etc., over the past few, probably thousands of years, but certainly the past 500 or 600 years, have never moved towards consolidated central power, at least at that level. Rather, what they would have is central power that seemed to be nationalistically or religiously centered, such that they could use a divide and conquer on the populace. That's been basically their approach all this time. So why shift? Why would they move towards a gigantic global collective government and or currency which would facilitate that government? And there were, basically the answer comes down to, there was only one reason I could think of that made sense. And in examining my conclusion, I had to go back and I had to examine all of the other aspects of this. This divide and conquer has worked so well. Humans are relatively stupid. If you can irritate them and say, he did it, you get two guys slugging it out and you take over what you want. And in fact, it was just you that started the whole process. So why abandon a successful strategy that's been proven to work all this time? And it's not that the strategy itself is failing, because I think there are actually moves that can be seen, patterns again, in the developing manifestation of reality, that these guys actually do want a giant collective government approach. And the only reason I can think of is that it makes sense only if you stop looking at Earth as a isolated, closed system, and instead had to look at Earth as part of a greater, larger system. Then you'd want everybody all cohesively behind you, whether it was through coercion or what, if you're pulling the strings and making the moves for the collective populace of Earth in dealing with somebody else. But if you're just thinking of Earth as an isolated, fighting amongst ourselves, then the way to power is to continue to maintain the divide and conquer approach.
Excellent. That is that has the ring of total accuracy on that.
It seems a good set of conclusions to draw.
It is. Because it's moving up. It's, the power of 10. Move up and look at what's happening in the whole neighborhood, not just on that street.
Right, exactly. And so if that's the case, then there should be some other... This is one of those things where I like to say, okay, if postulate A is true, then what predictive elements can we come from postulate A that would validate it? And so you should be able to make some predictions based on your theory that would say, well, if that's the case, then this also ought to be the case. And indeed, a lot of these contact meme-related stuff is just scaling right through our society. We've had a very large uptick in benign neglect, if you will, by the powers that be, all around the contact meme. everything from movies all the way through people like the exopolitics thing that are doing it at a serious level. Nowadays, where the powers that be appear to have taken more or less a hands-off approach. Not that they're supporting it, but they're no longer attempting to dampen down quite as much. Same thing seems to be true of all these UFO sightings, which are on the increase. And so it kind of makes sense. I see. They're trying to get us all aligned with this one vision at the same time, propelling us this way, that way, and the other way. The whole idea, the conclusion that you can draw that they really do want to eliminate some huge amount of the populace makes sense at one level, but it doesn't make sense in that context. It doesn't make sense that you would want to eliminate a population if you're going to need vast quantities of cannon fodder, for instance, if you're planning some kind of interplanetary war. You don't want to reduce your populace. So I just don't know about that component, why they're going to such lengths on the swine flu, which the whole point of it either is to form us into a collective where they're going to give us mind control zombie drugs, and or they're going to give you drugs that are going to kill you. There's no other point. They're certainly not making drugs that are going to in any way affect you if you've got the swine flu. So the conclusions are somewhat at odds there with what's actually manifesting relative to the swine flu. Now, it could be that I'm attempting to see a monolithic powers that be structure where a more diverse range of opinions exist, and that some of them want a world government and a vast populace to act as their muscle, so to speak, and another group wants to have the Earth remain isolated and reduce the populace to a manageable size. And it may be that there are two factions that way. If so, it'd be very difficult to determine, and not anything that we particularly have put any energy towards, just because there's so much in the way of crises developing, right now and through into the fall.
This is such a weird planet.
It's strange.
So weird.
That's probably why we're so fascinating to all the space aliens. It's like some kind of bizarre Douglas Adams meets Day of Your Lives, And they probably just can't get enough of this. And then we broadcast it.
Right.
Not only are we so goofy as to live it, but we put it on film and shoot it out into space.
Oh, gosh. All right, well, we're going to take a very short break here. Beyond the Ordinary with Clif of halfpasthuman.com.
We are very beyond the ordinary with Clif today, and so this is fascinating. Your thoughts on the global change of a strategy. Do you think that they're going to be now going, if they get this whole planet in one global group, are they going to start going for galactic power?
Well, we actually have to acknowledge that both Kellerman and Ian Lungold, the latter deceased, are very bright people, and that they indeed have decoded in their various separate ways within the Mayan cosmology this idea that we're stepping from one level to the next, from a planetary view which has only emerged recently. Bear in mind, within my lifetime, when I was born, my range was national at best, and now it's planetary. And it's just a strange planet, because I can speak with people in Russia in the morning and then people in Yelm here, 40 miles away in the afternoon with the same ease, relatively. So we've become a planetary species at that level. Not all of us, but that's to be understood, because there's a lot of us, and it's going to take a while to get us all in the same set of circumstances. But I know we're going galactic at our species level, and probably even beyond that. And I say beyond that because the next stage up is this concept of universal. And that's where it gets real tricky and very interesting. So, for instance, at the boundary layer between planetary and galactic, you basically lose any allegiance to nationalism. And that's probably got the powers that be a little bit scared, that there's people running all over the planet now that really don't care what country they are nominally from, that they operate on a planetary level, whether they're sitting on their butt like I am here with access to the internet, or whether they're jetting all over, delivering information to various different groups and organizing. So this has got the powers that be a little bit upset, because the next stage is to go to galactic, in which, if you look back from a galactic view, then you see your planet as part of a larger set of circumstances within a probably much larger galactic civilization than we can ever acknowledge. Let us first acknowledge that we're very much like the great apes, the big primates in Africa, or for instance,